right. Back to the Constitution. Christine. Like you too. All right, it seems like a long time ago that we looked at the Constitution. And it seems like we didn't get through section 3. I didn't actually mark it. I didn't have to take a couple of questions off the test or something.
Yeah,
We didn't completely finish section 3.
we made it to paragraph 2.
Did I not give you-
Elected every 2 years, governor can fill temporarily. Before we stop.
Did I give you hopefully the 30 years, 9 years as citizen? Okay. There's also on the test, hopefully talk about that. I was thinking we stopped there, but I wasn't positive. I didn't actually mark it. So let's go ahead and flip to Article 1, section 3. What does section 3 describe for us? Yes? The Senate. All right, very first phrase is the Senate shall be composed of 2 senators from each state. All right, the first phrase are chosen, or in that first phrase, chosen by the legislature thereof. We talked about that being shifted by an amendment. Very, very bad change.
Actually, I didn't get the senator part, like what their term was.
Oh.
Was it 30?
They serve 6-year terms, but they gotta be 30 years old,
30 years.
9 years a citizen.
9 years, that's why.
Yeah, okay, and then live in the state.
Yeah. I guess that's
All right, so this whole thing talks about the Senate. What does section 2 talk about? If you have no idea, you can look back at the first couple of words. Congress, but what part of Congress? That's very good. What part of the legislature? All right, Jacob saying the House, to describe the House. Here we have the Senate. Let's just jump in. All right. We finish up with the third paragraph. No person who shall not have attained to the age of 30 years, etc. The next one. The Vice President of the United States shall be President of the Senate. Okay. In the House, we don't have this. In the House, they get to choose the Speaker and the other officers. Here, we're having it mandated in the Constitution, at least the position that fills the President of the Senate. The Vice President, so Joe Biden, he is the President of the Senate. Appropriate position for him to be one of the more dysfunctional entities created ever in the history of the world. It's appropriate that he's at the head of it. The current Senate, it has in the past been a very effective body, but the Vice President is the President of the Senate. We talked before about the impeachment cases when the President is on trial, how the Chief Justice comes to run the trial. Anybody remember that? Okay. This is why, when the Vice President is the Senate. You guys are all evil and greedy, and you'd either turn the trial to make him innocent so that you would win favor with him, or you would turn the trial to make him guilty so that you become president. Right? People in government have the same sin nature that we have, and this is trying to eliminate that very obvious conflict of interest. So anyway, Vice President is the President of the Senate, but goes on, but shall have no vote unless they be equally divided. All right, so he doesn't vote unless there's a tie. Anybody think why we really need that provision for a tie in the Senate? The House is 435. So if everybody, it's always going to be an even number. There's 2 per state. So there's always the possibility of a tie. So here we have a clear-cut way for that to be broken. In the House, the Speaker doesn't vote either unless there's a tie. But here, the Vice President, he only votes in case of a tie. All right, this particular part here, the Vice President being President of the Senate, has been very, very, very ignored. I mean, the Vice President really has never exercised this authority. There's a President pro temp of the Senate that runs everything. He's never really tried to exercise this. I mean, going back to the very beginning, this has never really been exercised. I'd be curious to see the Vice President try to actually exercise this authority. I'd be curious if it is in the Constitution. But this is one of those powers that has been allowed to just kind of shrivel up and become almost non-existent, other than as a figurehead today. One of those side notes, this is also the only particular thing given to the Vice President. He has no no job officially, other than to be the head of the Senate, which he doesn't do. That sounds like a good job. Good pay, security guards, good chef, all kinds of good stuff. But anyway, that is the only thing given to him officially. The president is at liberty to give him whatever jobs he wants, and usually he does dump on him several significant jobs. But this is the only thing in the Constitution. Unless you want to put there waiting for the president to die so you can take his spot. I guess that also maybe would be an official job. All right, let's go on. Next paragraph, and this was questions. All right, the Senate shall choose their other officers. Okay, so we have the president of the Senate already chosen. That's the vice president. But all the rest, the Senate. I'm just thinking about that last true or false question. Was anybody honestly confused by the explanation afterwards? Because we hadn't actually read that. Maybe I should give you credit. Anyone else confused now? See him after class. I'll probably give you credit because we hadn't actually read it. So.
What paragraph are we on again?
We're on paragraph 5.
What section?
3. Yeah. We're just in paragraph 4. All right, so paragraph 5, the Senate shall choose their other officers. In the House, we talked about all the different positions, the floor leader and the chaplain and all those things. The Senate gets to pick those exclusively. Right? This fight in the House about the Speaker of the House, whoever they pick, there's nobody to appeal to. If somebody feels like they were slighted and the vote was unfair, they can't challenge it in the courts. They get to choose, and there's really nothing else outside that body to appeal to. The same thing here in the Senate. They get to choose. Nobody else gets to stick their nose into it and meddle. So. All right, so they shall choose their other officers. Also, a president pro tempore, the president for a time. That's what that means in Latin. President, you can probably think of temporary there, the tempore, president temporarily. So a president pro tempore, or pro temp, he's often just referred to. He's the guy that fills in when the vice president isn't there. Let me just read the statement. And also president pro tempore in the absence of the vice president, or when he shall exercise the office of president of the United States. So kind of a second in command, so whenever the vice president is gone, he takes over. And now in practice, the vice president is always gone. He just takes over. Okay, so the same statement there about them choosing their own officers. All right, next paragraph. You guys were all excited and chit-chattering before you started doing anything real. Now it's back to the dull lethargy of lecture. All right, let's see if we can get some people to answer some questions. At least show it to me that you're not dead. Something north of dead. So. All right, we're concerned about Jacob. Next paragraph, number 6. The Senate shall have the sole power to try all impeachments. Wait a second, I thought the House. It says, the House shall have the sole power of impeachment. End of section 2. Were they confused?
To try it.
All right, Jacob's saying it says to try it. Any other thoughts? Were they just confused? It was too hot that particular day? The ink was running and they couldn't read clearly. So.
It's definitely in the Greek.
It's in the Greek. Maybe Hebrew, Akkadian or something.
The House of Representatives can accuse the president.
Okay.
That's impeaching him, but then the Senate is the one that actually gets to decide if he's guilty or not.
Yes, okay, so here, it doesn't say they get to bring the charges. They try. They have the sole power to try all impeachments. The Senate is literally the jury. That's the way to think of it. The House will bring up accusations. The President should be removed from office for violation of his oath, failure to implement laws duly passed by Congress, et cetera, et cetera. You can come up with a whole list of good reasons. They would, if the House approves that and passes it, that's the impeachment. It would then go to the Senate, and the House would come over or send somebody over to the Senate to present their case. The president could send someone there to argue his case, or he can go himself. There would be a trial. And then the senators would vote, just like they were voting on a piece of legislation, guilty or not guilty. All right, so they are the Senate. So here, they have the sole power to try all impeachments. Okay, and it's sole power, they're the only ones. The president, I'm sorry, the House can't bring up charges of impeachment, and this is way too manly for John Boehner, but let's just pretend that John Boehner said, you know what, the Senate's never going to find these people guilty. Let's let the Indiana State Legislature hold the trial. That would be too manly for him. But he can't do that. The only place that the trial can take place is there. Right? So it's not something where the House can bring up impeachment charges and then figure out where they want to have the trial. It's got to go here. Sole power to trial impeachment. The Chief Justice, they can't drag it over to the court system and have a place Supreme Court. It's got to be there in the Senate. So, all right, it goes on to give a little description about how that trial should take place and the judgment that they can give. All right, when sitting for that purpose, when the Senate is meeting to have this trial, they shall be on oath or affirmation. Is that a particular brand of seat that they have to bring in? New carpet? What are we talking about there? Megan looks really excited about this. You're not? Okay. There's one honest person. What is it talking about here? On oath or affirmation?
Do they have to let us?
You've stolen too many answers.
Somebody
Somebody else. I'll let you answer, Megan. Oh, you're a little fast. It's not a hard question. Well, it's not a hard answer. What do they have to do before they start this trial? Yeah.
To testify or?
Each of the senators has to take an oath that they're going to be honest and fair and all that kind of good stuff. There's a special swearing in just for this trial. You might be thinking of a criminal trial where the guy testifying swears in. They're the jury, so they don't have to swear in that way. But there's a special oath or affirmation. If you remember right with Clinton, it was just a document that they all came and signed their name to, saying to be honest and fair and all that kind of stuff. So a special swearing in just for this when they convene to have this trial. Okay, it goes on. When the President of the United States is tried, the Chief Justice shall preside. We've already talked about that. All right, that's to prevent the conflict of interest with the Vice President, so he presides. And that in no person shall be convicted without the concurrence of 2/3 of the members present. Right, so a very high number, 2/3. We only need half to pass a law. Right? It only takes half of the members of the House to bring the charges. But when we actually have this trial, it requires 2/3, 67 senators, to vote in favor of conviction.
When it says of the ones that are present, if they're not there, does the number then go down? Like,
Yes, it would.
states don't show up.
It would. That doesn't typically happen for something of this significance, but
But if it were,
yeah. Jacob's really evil on dubious. It says of the members present, so you're saying, what if some states don't show up? Is that, we don't need 67 votes anymore.
what if for some random reason the Democratic states?
They show up flat tires or something. And there's a phrase in here, we'll get to it, where members of Congress can't be arrested while they're
Be arrested, just don't
serving,
be.
or anything like that. That's why, that's exactly why. For people like Jacob, right? He's here to exemplify for us what's wrong with their government. Thank you. Please don't get carried away with the don't pattern the Clintons for us. No any deaths in here. Carpets are new and blood's everywhere. Yeah. Okay. So anyway, 2/3, a very high number. I forget the number Clinton got to. It was, if I remember right, somewhere around 60, not quite to 2/3. A very sad day. Well, the man should be in jail for rape.
Yes.
Okay, and the Senate couldn't figure out that he shouldn't be president. And also in jail for murder and all kinds of other things. It was a very sad day. All right, so 2/3, that's a requirement legally to have him thrown out of office. Republicans, they're the mainstream, mainline Republicans in Congress. They typically start by admitting they're not going to win before they begin to negotiate with the president. And they've said before, there's no way we'll get a conviction in the Senate, so we're not even going to talk about impeaching the president. It'd be like some of you saying, there's absolutely no way I'll pass the next test, so I'm not even going to study. They capitulate beforehand. This is difficult to reach, okay, but it doesn't mean you shouldn't try. Okay, please study for the next test. It doesn't mean you shouldn't try. But John Boehner and others like him, they've said, well, there's no way we're going to get the conviction in the Senate. We don't have enough votes. So they don't even try. I think they should. Right? They should impeach him. Make him defend himself in the Senate. At least it would keep him busy. He wouldn't have enough time to run around the world and stir up trouble. All right, so 2/3, very high bar, intentionally so, I think appropriately so. All right, the last paragraph there talks about what type of punishment they can give. It's a good thing here for Jacob that there's some restrictions. We would have drawing and court readings in the White House lawn, and have all kinds of creative things. There's a pretty tight limit here to what they can do. This is only the impeachment trial, okay? So judgment in cases of impeachment shall not exceed further than 2. So this is the furthest they can go. Removal from office, they can kick him out, and disqualification to hold and enjoy any office of honor, trust, or profit under the United States. So they can kick him out and bar him from ever holding another office again. And that language is there because of lawyers. You can say, well, I'm not really holding the office, I'm just enjoying the powers of the office. It really is there to handle some legalities and make sure the bases are covered. Kick him out, bar him from holding office again. And that's it. You might think, well, that's not, Bill Clinton's guilty of rape and murder, and all I can do is kick him out. Right? It is you might think that's not quite severe enough. But
has that ever happened to any president where he just got
kicked out?
And then kicked out?
No, we never had one convicted. We've had some that were, one was very close. One would have been, Nixon probably would have been found guilty, but he resigned before the trial.
Most of them do that.
Yeah.
Just resign.
So we've never had it actually go to trial and face conviction. Sorry. I feel like an old man. I still remember driving down the road listening to the report of the count for the Clinton trial when they were voting. As no one says, I wanted to rip the radio out, throw it out the window, and drive my car into a telephone pole. It was just frustrating.
Wow.
That happens quite often when I listen to that.
Wasn't O.J. Simpson on the run too around that time?
Yeah, I wasn't that concerned about it, but it was around that time. It doesn't fit that glove.
Yeah.
All right, so that's the limit. That's all the Senate can do. If Clinton had been found guilty, all I can do is kick him out and say, you can't ever hold, you can't become a senator, you can't be a member of the House, you can't be on the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, you can't be an ambassador, just bar him from holding any office in the government again. That's the limit there. So the next phrase does take care of other possibilities. All right, so it says, but the party convicted, the president or whoever, shall nevertheless be liable and subject to indictment, trial, judgment, and punishment according to the law. So if somebody's kicked out of office for rape and murder, then there can be a criminal trial and him go to jail, but there's got to be a separate criminal trial. Right? The Senate can't throw them in jail. All they can do is kick them out of office. Okay, I think it's appropriate to separate the two. We have a criminal justice system, and if they commit a crime, that system can handle them. But we do have a system here to get them out of office. All right, so an impeachment trial. If we had some manly Republicans, if we had more manly Republicans, we would have had an impeachment trial at some point. He might not have been found guilty. We would have had a trial, at least. If you think of all the times where he just blatantly ignored what the law said, before gay marriage became the law of the land, through the Supreme Court that can't make laws. Before that happened, he just said, I'm not going to enforce the Defense of Marriage Act, just arbitrarily decided that he's not going to enforce it. Just blatant dereliction of duty. So, there should have been a trial, and we could have watched this happen in real time. But, oh well, maybe next time. All right, questions about the impeachment trial? It doesn't happen too often. Only a handful of times. The president, judges can be impeached, and we'll get there. I think there might have been 8 or something that have been impeached. So it doesn't happen all the time. Probably shouldn't happen all the time. If it does get to where we didn't have impeachment trials all the time, we're really in trouble. All right, section 4. Blazing away here through the first section. First article. All right, section 4. Still dealing with Congress. Right? The times, places, and manner of holding elections for senators and representatives shall be prescribed in each state by the legislature thereof. Okay, so we have here, this is kind of a twofold statement. We have a but there and gives Congress some authority. But the default position is the states get to pick when, where, and how members of the Senate and representatives are chosen. The default position is to them. Congress does have some authority here. The next phrase says, but the Congress may at any time by law make or alter such regulations, except as to the place of choosing senators. Okay, so if the state of Indiana said we're going to, I wish they'd be more creative and make elections more exciting. We're going to have a lottery system, and you can buy tickets. And we're going to pick 100 winners, and they get to come and vote for our next member of the House. 100 per district. And it would cover the cost of the election, it would create some excitement on the night of the election, you know, who's going to win, and who's going to win the drawing, and who's going to win to become the House of Representatives member. So if the state of Indiana did that, Congress could step in and say, you know what, let's not have the raffle and drawing. They can come in and alter some of those things. But the default position is the state gets to make the rules and regulations unless Congress comes in to alter them. Okay. Why does it specify except to the place of choosing senators? You have to really think to the original mode of electing senators. Why would that be kind of carved out special? They don't say except to the place of choosing members of the House. Why is it members of the Senate? We've got two people. And we've got the usual people with a dull stare of ignorance. You could remove the wonder. You know, some of us are wondering if you're ignorant. You could just, we wouldn't doubt anymore if you answer the question. One way or the other. Jacob's helping Devontae. So, how were senators chosen originally?
Not by the people.
Not by the people, but by
The state.
state,
Government.
not the government, state legislature.
Yeah.
Particular state legislature. So again, you got to think like Jacob.
Do that.
If there was a particular state that you're afraid they're going to pick some senators that you didn't like, and you're in Congress, you could just pass a law saying, all right, the election for the state of Indiana senators takes place in Antarctica. And if you don't get more than half of the members of the state legislature there, then you can't vote. Jacob would do that. Or it's going to take place on this ship that's out in the Atlantic someplace, and you're going to find it. So the Congress can't change that, and it really goes back to the original mode of election because it was the state legislature picking them. But beyond that, they can decide when and other things like that. Today we have all the elections on the same day. They have kind of a joint custody over that thing. All right, questions about that? Just think of the fun we could have if we really kind of got creative with this. We have raffles and drawings and, boxing matches, and the winners get to vote.
Could they make anything about having to pay to register to vote? In order for,
Well, there's been some,
for identity fraud or?
that mostly has come through the courts where they declared that type of stuff is unconstitutional
Because it's your right.
somehow. Really, they stretched sometimes to declare that stuff as unconstitutional. That does bring a point I was wanting to make here. There are some regulations about how elections take place that didn't come from Congress. They came from the courts. And that is not the place they should come from. All right? The courts have mandated that the members for the districts for the House of Representatives have to be as close to equal in population as possible. Okay. That's nowhere in the Constitution. It's left up to the state, times, places, and manner. They get to decide that, unless Congress intervenes. The Supreme Court said, oh, it's a violation of the Constitution to have a district with 50,000 people and another district with 100,000 people. Doesn't matter if the district with 50,000 people is 3 times the geographical size as the one with 100,000 people, because we have a large city and we have country. It doesn't matter. They got to be equal in population. The phrase was used was one man, one vote. They said it was unfair for this guy's vote here to be 1 out of 50,000, and this guy's vote here to be 1 out of 100,000. Okay, maybe, but it's not the court's job to make that regulation. If Congress passed that, it would be fine. But the courts dictate that is beyond their role. So, all right, so there are some regulations, and we will talk about some of those as we go through, especially once we get to some of the amendments and things. But it was just purely a Supreme Court decision for something like that. So, all right, so the default position is the state legislature gets to describe and figure out how the election takes place. So, all right, last one, last paragraph. Sorry, not last thing for the day. Disappoint you. The Congress shall assemble at least once in every year, and such meeting shall be on the first Monday in December, and this day shall by law appoint a different day. All right, pretty straightforward. Congress has to meet once a year. We should win that the other way, at least once per decade or something. The less they're there, the better. And then it gives a time for that first meeting. Unless they by law shall appoint a different day. Okay, you have to think a little bit evil and devious. The president could connive to say, well, yeah, we're going to let you meet, but it's going to be on December the 31st, and hope we get everything in. If it's dictated in the Constitution, and if it's going to change, Congress has to change it by law. They have to propose a law. It's got to go through the whole legislative process and then be signed by the president. The president can't arbitrarily change it. The Chief Justice can't. It's got to go through them. Okay, and it's to protect the fact that they're going to actually. Now that first Monday in December has been changed. If you have a Constitution that makes note of it, it refers us to the 20th Amendment, which simply says, you get there. The terms of senators and representatives begin at noon on the 3rd day of January, instead of the first Monday in December, 3rd day of January. So it has been changed by a constitutional amendment, but we still have the requirement there that if it moves, Congress has to do it. Okay, pretty straightforward. Section 5.
Mm-hmm.
Josh wants brownie points, and so does Megan. She is not, like, she's all excited. Oh, yes, please, I've been waiting for number 5. It's my favorite number. I know why Megan likes 5. She's a student of math, I know. The ancient Sumerians, and this is not a joke. 3 was a number for men, and this was their reason. I won't say that I disagree with it, but they said there's a balance point. If you have 3 objects, there's one in the middle, it's balanced. That was the reasoning. 2 was a number for women, no balance point. And 5,
Megan.
the number of marriage. So that's why Megan was all excited about section 5. 2 plus 3 gives us 5. So Megan is all over 5. That isn't a joke. They really did believe that. So I don't know that that's why Megan's all excited about 5. All right, so I was going to ask Megan who's the balanced person that we'll see. All right, section 5. Each house shall be the judge of the elections, returns, and qualifications of its own members. Okay, let's stop right there. So each house, they're the final arbiter of who wins. If Megan ran for Congress and gets elected, okay, the final say about whether or not she actually takes her seat is Congress. Right? Is she qualified? I don't think so. Are you 25 yet? And she's not old enough. Okay, the state of Indiana, we could vote and she could win. The state of Indiana could send her off to Congress, and Congress just say, no, you're not old enough. Right? They have the final say. Not the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, etc. They have the final say. Okay, so they are the judge of the elections, returns, and qualifications. Or if Megan wins and who wants to be her opponent? Jacob. All right, let's do it, Bethany, we'll get Bethany, let's say that Megan wins the first count, and she claims she's the member of the house. Bethany, with some evil, conniving lawyers, which that's a kind of redundancy to talk about evil, conniving lawyers, we can just say with some lawyers. She convinces them to do a recount, and in the recount she throws out a whole bunch of ballots because of hanging chads and things of that nature, and she wins. And then there's this big fight, you know, they're doing it on the street, and, you know. The state of Indiana is confused, we can't figure it out. The final say, if we can't figure it out, the House is going to. They'll say Megan's the representative, or Bethany is, or they can say we don't want either one of them, right? They are the final arbiter. Okay, now it's not like the day of the election, there's members of the House. It'd be great to see Nancy Pelosi actually doing something, observing an election, making sure, they're not there doing that. But if some state does that, sends 2 representatives, the House is going to make that final decision. Okay? If you think back to Bleeding Kansas, when they elected 2 sets of members of Congress and sent them both, the House got to decide. Right? So they're the final arbiter on all that time. It doesn't typically, by the time they actually go to take their seats, it's typically been settled in the state, and they only send once. There's not a real question. But if there ever was a time where some states send 3 representatives to take 1 seat, they don't all just get to rotate or something. The House would decide. So the House shall be the judge of the elections, returns, and qualifications of its own members. Is that a safe place to put that authority and power?
Yes.
Well, I think it's as safe as any place in the government. Why would it be appropriate to be there? And why would it,
Because they could protect themselves from outside influences.
yeah, it's very appropriate for them to do this to protect, if it was the president that got to decide this. Think of the influence and sway he could have. You know, he could go to Shem, a member of the House, and say, Shem, you've not maintained your residence in Indiana. I'm going to throw you out of office. Right? It would give that, whoever the person is on the outside that gets to make this decision, would give them undue leverage to control Congress. Okay, so I think it's an appropriate place. I'm not sure if it's a safe place, but I think it's an appropriate place to have this authority. Again, a lot of these things, you have to think like Jacob. Evil and conniving and wicked, and think of ways that that somebody can have undue leverage on Congress or whatever part we're talking about, and that helps you see why this is there. Why does it stay here that they get to make that decision? You would think that'd be an obvious call. Well, of course, you know, if some states send somebody who's 18 to be a member of the House, the House doesn't have to sit there and say, oh, well, I guess they sent them, we'll take them. You know? We say, of course the House should say, oh, get out of here, you're not 25. And it's a state in black and white that they have that power. And I said, good, they're appropriate. So, all right, let's go on. So we have the House as the final judge of all those things. And it goes, and a majority of each shall constitute a quorum to do business. A quorum to do business. Anybody have any idea what a quorum is? At this point, usually I joke about this is not the girls' dorm rec room where there are 3 arguments taking place at the same time. It's not the plural of quarrel. The quorum. Josh wants an answer? Nobody else knows? Where did you guys go to high school? Why are you sleeping? Josh?
Is it the minimum number of members of an assembly or society that must be present at meetings, proceedings?
It's pretty impressive
Valid.
definition off the top of your head.
Yes.
It's the minimum number to do business. Okay? We don't have this, but if there was a quorum to actually have class, you know, if there was, Mr. Armica said you've got to have at least 1/3 of the students present to have class. And I show up someday and there's 2 of you here. Then I would not be legally, by the laws of our school, allowed to have class because there weren't enough present. If there was a 1/3 plus 1, whatever that is here, then I can have class. And the rest of you that didn't show up, you could complain, right? And say, well, we had a quorum, we could do business. Right? So here we have a minimum number required to do business. That's all it is. That's what a quorum is. And it specifies what that particular amount is for Congress. It says the majority. more than half. 51 members for the Senate and whatever, half of 230. Yeah. More than half is all that's required. So a quorum is not half. A quorum is the minimum number to do business. And for Congress, that minimum number is 50%. If you lived around here or paid attention a couple years ago in Wisconsin, Scott Walker was fighting with the labor unions and getting, pulling the special privilege that the unions had in Wisconsin. And part of the Wisconsin state legislature, they were trying to stop some bills coming through, so they fled to Illinois. Anybody remember that case at all? If you didn't live around, you might not notice it. But they actually left the state and were hiding at a hotel in Illinois, some undisclosed location. So there wouldn't be enough people there to actually, for the legislature to meet. There wasn't the quorum anymore, and they were in hiding, protesting what the governor was doing, destroying labor unions and all kinds of good stuff like that. But there was this quorum they were going after, because there weren't enough people actually left to hold the session. Now, it's in Wisconsin, but the same idea holds here. I'm just thinking how pleasant it'd be if more than half of Congress went to some undisclosed location and hid out for several months. Go ahead. We'll send you some extra money or something to pay for the hotel. So, all right, so a quorum, the minimum number to do business. If John Boehner showed up and there's 3 people sitting there, they can't start passing laws. It's got to be more than half. Okay?
My math is off, it's 218.
218. Or if it's the other way around, Nancy Pelosi's back in charge. You gotta really get your eyes wide open and you stretch your face back together. That might be why there's not a quorum, because people are a little bit scared. But she's back in charge. She can't get together with 4 or 5 of her liberal Democrats and have all these votes and pass all this legislation. There's gotta be more than half there. Okay? So I think appropriate and good. Quorum, minimum number to do business. All right, it goes on there. We have a but, a little bit of explanation. But a smaller number may adjourn from day to day. And now here you have to really be Jacob-like. Imagine that more than, we had that 1/3 requirement for class, the whole class, to do any type of class business. So we should come to class one day and we're all here and Jacob leads just over 2/3 of the class out. And we're left here with just me and 3 or 4 of you. There's not enough people there to do business. So we can't decide to end class even. We can't make any decision. We're stuck. Right? So here, but a smaller number may adjourn from day to day. So if everybody walks out, the people that are left can say, "All right, let's just quit for the day. We're not stuck here forever because they walked out." So, and it goes on, and may be authorized to compel the attendance of absent members in such manner and under such penalties as each house may provide. So the 4 of us that are left here can say, "All right, we're going to tell these people that walked out that." Every minute you don't come back to class, your final average gets dropped by 5 points. Whatever the group that's left there, they can compel the others to come back. Okay, so again, you can see they're trying to prevent one side from abusing blatantly their position and power. What's that?
Couldn't that be used the other way though?
What do you mean by that? I'm
That's
sure it
why
can.
they-
I don't know if I like what Jacob's thinking too much. Okay, so a quorum. Can anybody, I think it's appropriate that we have the special clause for smaller numbers. If literally, you're thinking, that would never happen. What dirty dogs would, get up and, 300 members of the House walk out and leave the last, less than, 100, whatever it is, sitting there. They can't end, they can't vote to pass it. They can't do anything. They're just kind of stuck. And who would do that? And this prevents that type of activity. So there's still plenty of ways that they can be nasty and mean to each other. And then you get on the news and smile and talk about the other guys being evil and partisan. But there's still plenty of ways to do that, just not this particular way. All right, let's go on here. Each house may determine the rules of its proceedings. So this is exclusively their job. The Supreme Court can't come in and say, "Oh, that's unfair, the way you're doing something." If Boehner has some votes, the Chief Justice can't come in and say, "Oh, you didn't follow the Robert's Rules of Orders for legislative bodies," or whatever. They decide completely. The House or the Senate, they could do, I don't know, I always think of a spin wheel type thing, or some raffle, you know, everybody that pays $1,000 gets to vote. They can do it however they want to. They could vote, you know, if you want this piece of legislation to pass, then come up here and do 50 push-ups. If you can't do 50 push-ups, you're voting no. It's up to them. Okay, now they're not gonna get ridiculous like that, but the rules are up to them to decide. We're going to talk about that once we finish reading the first article. We'll talk about some of those rules. The House and the Senate have adopted different rules. It's perfectly fine. The Senate has a filibuster rule. The House doesn't. The House has a rules committee. The Senate doesn't. So they've picked different ways to do it, and it's completely up to them. So it's completely up to them. They have been entrenched in the way they're doing things basically from the start of Congress. There's a lot of precedence and tradition in the way they're doing it, but it's really completely up to them. They could change it at will, and people would cry, talk about them undermining the integrity of the nation, but it's up to them. They can decide. All right, so each House may determine the rules of its proceedings. Let me back up again. Why is it appropriate that they get to have that power? Why not let the President kind of have oversight of Congress to make sure they're being fair to each other, or the Chief Justice? Why not that? Checks and balances, yeah, it would give him undue influence over Congress. All right, we don't want that. All right, so there's really no place else to put this that would prevent it from being used as a means to undermine the authority of Congress. So it's appropriate to put it there. All right, punish members for disorderly behavior. Okay. Caitlin comes in with a cane and starts beating somebody over the head. Things like that have happened. All right, we could kick her out of class. We could, you know, eye for an eye. You know, we all take turns beating Caitlin in the head with the stick. We determine, each house determines the punishment for disorder. Kick them out, other things, yeah.
Would that be something like what that one guy did to the president or Bush? I can't remember.
Eli?
He and then threw a shoe at him or whatever. That's what I'm thinking.
That was an error.
Oh, that wasn't a senator, but it was in Iraq or someplace. But there was a guy who yelled out to the president, "You lie," at the same, because he was lying. But there, if I think it was part of the House, they could vote and punish him somehow if they wanted to.
Did they do that to him?
They didn't. No, he apologized. It was very disappointing. It was true. The president was lying. It was true. All right. So punish members, and then the last part there, and with the concurrence of 2/3 expel a member. So a high bar there to kick somebody out of office, but they can't. All right, we're not going to finish section 5, but don't shut your brain off any more than it is already. We'll come back tomorrow for class, and we're going to get to, I believe, section 7 tomorrow, which talks about how laws are passed. And I know you don't think this is possible. I like to enjoy class, and I found it fun to pass a pretend law. We'll split up. One group will be the Senate, one group will be the House, and we'll propose some piece of legislation and run it through the process. And then at the end, I veto it. But what I need you to be doing is thinking about some law, and it's more fun if you think about something involving college life. Right? Something you'd like to change, and we'll run it through Congress and see what happens. All right.